I'm Dave Jones with Dave Jones Realty. Everybody will tell you home prices in Connecticut have exploded, but almost nobody tells you which towns exploded the most. I have pulled 5 years of data across New Haven, Hartford, Litchfield, and Fairfield counties, and one town has jumped almost 60% since 2021. And it's probably not the town you would guess. So today, we're counting down the 10 Connecticut towns with the biggest price jump since 2021 and what that means if you're buying a home right now. Let's get started with number 10 on the list is Naugatuck. Back in 2021, the median sales price in Naugatuck was only $245,000. Today, it's $340,000. That's up 38.8% in 5 years. Now, I sold a house in Naugatuck a couple years back to a young couple who almost didn't look at it because they never really spent any time there. They knew Waterbury next door, and they figured Naugatuck was a more or less the same kind of town. It's not. Naugatuck has its own downtown, it has its own train station, it has the Metro North in Waterbury branch, and it also has a mill rate of 39.79, which sounds high until you see some of the towns coming up later on the list. It's about 5 minutes away from Waterbury and not much more than that to hop on 84 and go to either side of the state. The streets in the older sections are quiet and very walkable, and it's often surprising for people. There's also a real park system running along the Naugatuck River that a lot of buyers don't discover until after their second or third visit. And once they see it, it usually changes how they think about Naugatuck as a whole. A lot of buyers found Naugatuck on their own without anybody telling them about it. And that's exactly why it's here. Next up on my list is number 9, and that is Wallingford, Connecticut. Wallingford comes in at $279,900 in 2021, and it's all the way up to $395,000 now. That is a 41.1% jump. Wallingford sits right between New Haven and Hartford, so you get the highway access without either city's price tag. And the mill rate at 24.12, which is genuinely low for a town sitting in the dead center of the state. I've had clients cross Wallingford off their list after just 10 minutes of searching without ever spending any time there. They knew the name and they moved on. Then I drive them through the town green, past the library, down towards the reservoir, and they're calling me from the car and asking, why hasn't this place been on our radar before? This happens more with Wallingford than almost any other town I show. And it's a big reason the prices have climbed the way they have. Word of mouth does more work in this town than any listing photo ever could. And the strong local school system only adds to the word of mouth every time a household moves in and tells their old neighbors all about it. There's also a genuinely active downtown scene with great restaurants that have opened in the last couple years. And that's actually a great sign of a town's momentum. It's the same momentum we see going on in Naugatuck that we just spoke of. Number 8 on my list is Stonington. This one's a little different because Stonington isn't really a starter hometown. It's a coastal town, and the money follows the water the same way it always has. The prices have risen from $434,500 in 2021 up to $620,000 now, a 42.7% climb. Stonington Borough alone could eat this whole video. The working harbor, the sea captain houses, the streets you can walk end to end in 15 minutes. But the number that matters most here is the mill rate. And that number is 18.18. That is one of the lowest mill rates in all of Connecticut. And when buyers do the math on the actual cost of ownership, the carrying costs to live in a shoreline property, that number does a lot of the convincing for people before I ever have to open my mouth. Compare that 18.18 to some of the mill rates coming up later in the list, and you will start to understand why buyers are willing to pay more upfront and save all the money on the back end every single year. It's a quality of life purchase as much as it is a financial one, and the two happen to line up here. I've had buyer clients tell me that they flat out have never considered the shoreline because they did not think they can afford it. Once they walked into the borough on a quiet weekday morning, the conversation changes completely. Number 7 on our list today is New Canaan. And now look, I know New Canaan is not in the budget for most people watching this channel, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend it should be. The number is important, and I'm not skipping it because it's uncomfortable. It was down to just 1.59 million in 2021. And today, 2.287 million, up 43.9%. And I'm including it here because it tells you something important about the whole state. Even the towns that were already expensive got more expensive faster than almost anywhere else. And if you've got family or friends looking in Fairfield County at that level, this is the town where the ceiling kept moving up the entire time they were deciding to jump in. The best time to buy the house was yesterday. The second best time to buy it was today. That's the pattern with a lot of Fairfield County right now. And it's worth knowing before you build your search around a number that was accurate 2 years ago and isn't accurate anymore. Because the number you're working from might already be out of date by the time you already write an offer. I've talked to people buying here and they just assume Fairfield County has a fixed price point and they could not budget around it. Every single one of them was wrong, and within 6 months of starting their search, the whole county kept moving, and New Canaan is moving faster than most of it. Number 6 on our list is Bristol. Bristol is up from 2021, where it sat at 225,000. Today it comes in at 325,000, an increase of 44.4%. Bristol is a town I get a lot of questions about because people remember it as an affordable option next to Stonington and next to Farmington, and it still is, relatively speaking. But the gap is closing fast, faster than most buyers realize until they're already caught up in a bidding war. If you're trying to figure out whether a town like Bristol still fits your number today, that's exactly the kind of thing we do on a weekly basis. We do Zoom calls to help our buyers take off the pressure. Just talk numbers, screen to screen, a real honest conversation about what is realistic for you, what you are looking for, and how we can help you get there. Anyway, Bristol's got that mix of established neighborhoods, newer construction, and it keeps pulling in buyers from Hartford who got outbid one too many times as they got closer to the city, and they finally widened their search out in this direction. Plus a genuine community feel with all the parks and rec programs that they have. It keeps people coming back once they land here. Once buyers actually settle in, the return rate is very high. I rarely hear from a Bristol buyer wanting to move again in a couple years to somewhere other than a bigger Bristol house. That really says something about the town and how it holds up once you're actually living there, instead of just passing through. Have you noticed this pattern yet? Every town so far started out cheap and got squeezed by somebody else's overflow. So keep that in the back of your head because it gets more obvious the further we go through the list. And by the time we get to number 1, it's going to make total sense why this is happening. Number 5 on my list is Thomaston. Now I've got to be straight with you. Back in 2021, the entry-level price was $229,200. Today, $338,500, a 47.7% jump. And that happened without anybody trying to hype this place up on purpose. Think about the people that bought there in 2021, just settling in at their kitchen, hanging out, swinging on their swings, walking their dogs in the yard, and getting all that sweet equity, almost 50% of it. It has a small downtown. It's very walkable. It has a mill rate at 35.81, and it's wedged right between Waterbury and Litchfield. So you get quiet tree-lined streets without being isolated from anything you actually need on the day-to-day. And I show this town more than almost any other. The buyers who come here are typically skeptical and leave asking where the next listing is going to hit. There's a general sense of community here, the kind where the person at the hardware store knows your name by your second visit. That's not something you can put a number on, even though the number clearly reflects it that way. Number 4 on our list is Wethersfield. Wethersfield was at $280,000 in 2021, and today, $415,000, a 48.2% increase. Wethersfield has Old Wethersfield, which is one of the oldest historic districts in the entire state, and it sits right on the Hartford line. So your commute to the city is basically nothing. We're talking 10 to 15 minutes on a normal day. You can watch the Yard Goats at Dunkin' Donuts Park on any given night. You can run over to watch UConn play at the old Hartford Civic Center. There is still a lot to do, and you're close to it all. The mill rate here in Wethersfield is 41.22, which is definitely on the higher side of this whole list. And I always tell buyers looking here to factor in the mill rate into your monthly number before you fall in love with the historic district, because it will change what you can actually offer once the numbers become real, once the pre-approval includes the taxes. There is a super strong civic identity here, and it's all around the historic center that is genuinely part of why the buyers are paying to be here. It's not just the square footage. It's the museums. It's the working farms. It's the town green. All of it adds up to a sense of place that's hard to find this close to the state capital. Here's the thing about every town on the list so far. 5 years ago, every single one of them was still affordable to somebody with a normal income. That window is closing town by town right in front of us. And based on what I'm watching right now, it's not going to reopen. If you're serious about buying in Connecticut and you want to sit down and actually map out which of these towns is a good fit in your budget, don't wait. Think about if you had done this back in 2021. You can pull all that equity and go buy your next house and have it paid for. Don't wait. Call us. Our contact info is here. This is what we do on a daily basis. Have a conversation, no pressure. We love real estate and we're here to help you. Quick question before we jump on to the next one. Has your own town showed up on this list yet? Are you still waiting to see where it lands? Because the next 3 towns are all where the list stops being about affordable towns catching up and starts being about towns that were already respected and now they're getting more expensive on top of that. So let's hop right into those. That is number 3 on my list, West Hartford. West Hartford shows up on so many lists I do, and for good reason. $345,414 in 2021, up 50.5% to $520,000. West Hartford has always had the reputation with the town center, Blueback Square, the walkability, the schools. People bring it up every single time I do an open house there. But what's changed is how far the reputation now travels. I've had buyers relocating here from 3 different states, and they named West Hartford by name. The mill rate is 44.78, one of the highest on the whole list. And buyers still come here anyways, year after year without blinking. That tells you something about the people that are actually willing to own a piece of this town. Every year, I think people expect the momentum with West Hartford to slow down, and every year, it does not. Number 2 on our list is Plymouth. $225,000 in 2021 to $344,000 now. 52.6%. Plymouth sits right next to Thomaston and Bristol, and for years it was the town people drove through on their way to somewhere else. Not anymore. With a mill rate of 39.57, inventory is still reasonable compared to its neighbors, and buyers who got priced out of Bristol are landing here instead. That's the pattern with almost every single town on the back half of the list. It's overflow from somewhere else more expensive. Even West Hartford, it's coming from Avon and Farmington. Eventually, that overflow town becomes the expensive one also. And then what happens? The whole thing repeats itself all over again. It's like a wave working its way through the map, town by town, year by year. Plymouth's got quiet residential streets and easy access to Harwington and Thomaston on either side. So buyers priced out of those towns are often landing a few minutes down the road, and instead of leaving the area entirely, they stay, which keeps the whole cluster of towns moving together. And that brings us to number one, the town with the single biggest price jump across all 4 counties we're covering today since 2021. Before I tell you, think about it for a second. It's not New Canaan. It's not on the shoreline. It's a town where most buyers drive straight past without giving it a second thought on their way to somewhere else they assume is better. The number one town on our list for price appreciation? Torrington, Connecticut. Who knew? Torrington, $180,000 in 2021, $285,000 today. 58.3% increase in just 5 years. And it's not even close to the next runner-up. It's more than 5 full points ahead. Torrington was the town everybody used to call the affordable option in Litchfield County. And it's still one of the most affordable options in Litchfield County. But affordable moved along the way. And over the course of the 5 years, it's quite a bit different now. The mill rate's 38.45. There's an actual working downtown with awesome restaurants. I've mentioned it before. Go to Geppetto's, a theater that's been running since 1930, sits right at the base of Litchfield Hills. You got mountain access without mountain prices, or at least the prices of Litchfield and Washington mountain towns. Torrington is proof that towns everybody overlooked are exactly the towns you should be watching the closest every single time you run a search, because the overlooked town today will be the expensive town 3 to 5 years from now. I've watched this town get skipped over by buyers more times than I can count, and every one of those buyers who went ahead and looked anyway was glad they did. And now they're counting all their sweet equity all the way to the bank. So here's what all 10 of these towns have in common. And I want you to actually sit with this for a second instead of just scrolling past it. None of them were expensive 5 years ago, except New Canaan, which was already expensive and got worse. Every one of those towns was on a list that somebody could still get into with a normal down payment back in 2021. That window does not stay open forever. And based on everything I'm seeing right now in real time with boots on the ground, I had showings this morning and I have showings tonight. It's not going to stay open much longer. The buyers who moved on these towns early are the ones who came out ahead. That's not luck. They're paying attention before anybody else does, and they're acting on it. The numbers still make sense, so don't wait for the next town to show up on this list. Here's what I'd actually do with this list if I were you. Don't just watch the number one town on here and assume that's your only option, because by the time a town hits the top of the list like this, a lot of the room to move is already gone. Look at the towns sitting in the middle of the list instead. Let's anticipate a little bit. Let's find a town that hasn't had that 50% increase. Get your financing sorted out now, not after you found the house, because in towns that move this fast, the buyers who are ready to act the same day they see the property are the ones who will actually win. If this list tells you anything, it's that the next town on that kind of run is probably sitting somewhere on another list, quietly waiting for enough people to notice. And if you want to see where the momentum is heading before it ever shows up on a list like this, I've got a full video for you breaking down 3 Connecticut towns about to get very competitive. I'll meet you over there. Click the link right here and go see that video next.